Hey everybody, Matthew from Nerd News Today here. Thanks for stopping by, and today we have another addition to Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. And no, I don't just mean a new bad guy in the comics, I mean another part of Diamond Select's Marvel Gallery series that's been highlighting all of the baddies that Spidey has faced over the years. And today we have a real classic and pretty important bad guy. That would be Kraven the Hunter. So today we're taking a look at a Marvel Gallery PVC diorama statue of Kraven. Kraven is a real curious character in the comics too. He is essentially a hunter of prey, and Spider-Man has been one of his biggest prey throughout the years. And these days there's all sorts of Kraven clones running around. There's Son of Kraven, there's a whole lot of Kraven, but this is classic Kraven and one of the best Kravens out there really. And I have some pretty interesting hopes for this piece here. You know, I'm not necessarily like the biggest Kraven mark out there, but I can appreciate what he does, and I appreciate when he shows up in the comics and what he brings. So I'm very, very excited to see what it's going to be like in statue form. So obviously I want to get him out of the box as soon as I can, so let's just breeze through this packaging here, and you guys can see it's really just like any other Marvel Gallery or really any other Diamond Select statue that they've done in PVC formats. And that is to say usually a square or rectangle of some kind with a whole lot of windows. In this case here, big old window on the front, big long windows on the sides because of the way that this piece is designed. And a little bit more rectangular, I guess you could say also, because this piece kind of stretches out a little bit more longer than a typical piece does, I feel like. And of course we can't forget that Diamond Select always comes with this handy dandy sunroof so that Kraven can get himself a tan. The back of the box has an image of Kraven outside of the packaging, and also has a really nice little bio about Kraven actually. The one downside about this bio, if I want to nitpick, and I'm going to, is that the font is a little tiny there. I'm not really a fan of small fonts, but I do appreciate the fact that this bio is pretty nuanced. So, you know, if it's a space issue and they wanted to kind of keep that really good text there, I get it, but not a big deal really, not a deal killer at all. And really none of that compares to the most important information on this box here, and that is credits to the artists who made this piece. And this was designed by Caesar and sculpted by Alterton. That's a pair of artists who we really admire. We really like their work here in this channel. They do a lot of great stuff here. So, you know, knowing that they're behind this piece, that definitely has me a little bit more curious and has certainly elevated my expectations of it. So, yeah, I'm going into this now a little bit more excited than I was a few minutes ago now that I know that information. I hope you guys are too. And if you're not familiar with those two artists, hopefully you're going to have a good taste left in your mouth by the end of this video once you see this guy out of the box. So, without further ado, let's go ahead now, take this Kraven out of this packaging and get a closer look at him from all angles. And here is our Kraven the Hunter statue now out of the box. You can take a look at him right now. And we're going to do a nice little rotation so you can see him from all 360 degrees of Kraven. So Kraven's a really interesting character, and I've actually been reading up a lot more on him lately. It just worked out that way conveniently. You know, I went back and started reading some of his old key moments, and he is a very interesting and I feel like often underrated bad guy. So it's really nice to have a statue like this that treats him very seriously and makes him a threat. I mean, really, there's a lot of story in this piece, but you know, he is threatening in this piece. It's telling us a lot about who he is. It's showing us a lot of his character. And I don't just mean character in the small, I mean character in the uppercase. So this is a very informative, very interesting, skillfully executed piece about Kraven. So let's spend some time now going through the minutiae of this vinyl. I was going to say vinyl. I don't know what vinyl is, but this vinyl PVC statue here. And, you know, the first thing I want to talk about is not actually the likeness, because normally that's where I'll go first, but I actually want to spend some time, I think, on the body language of our Kraven. That's, you know, where we should go really with all statues in general, but this is a really interesting piece because he's really like stalking someone right now. You can see that with the pose and the energy it's in this piece and this kind of stance that he's in. You know, it's like he's out on the hunt. He's on the prowl, but he's also lurking, and he's very stealthy. And you can tell he's stealthy just because of like how his feet are, the way he's like crouched down in this position. You know, this knee here is not touching the floor. It's right above the floor, so he's like stealthily gliding across this surface here, this landscape, very interesting landscape with bamboo sticking out of it. So whatever he's doing, it's certainly no good, but he's doing it really quietly and very, very carefully. And it's at this point where I feel like we go into the face, because the face tells you a lot more of the story now too. Because this face here is not him like biting someone or being angry or anything like that. This is a face with intention on it. And that intention is to find his target. And what happens next is up to, well, Kraven really. Because he is dominating the scene. And this face to me says that he is dominating his prey. He knows what they're doing next. He's planned this out. He has plans in mind. So that face alone just tells us so much. And, you know, I should let you know the camera's basically on eye level with him. So I'm going to have to tilt him up a little bit. And the reason I say that is because, you know, again, this is a Kraven that's kind of skulking around. So he's very laser focused on something, and his eyes are like really sunken into him. So If I do this, you guys can probably see him a little bit better. You can see that likeness a little bit better here. But it's really cool. The one downside, though, I can say is his eyes are super tiny. Those are such tiny, small pupils and eyes in general. That is one thing I don't like as much. I think they're way too small. I think, personally, they're out of proportion. I don't mean that like the sculptor made a mistake. I feel like whoever was like scanning their instructions or something, like something got warped, because they look so small, and I just don't like the way it looks. I just think it looks really off and really weird. So that's unfortunate, because the face itself is actually really nicely done. I really like this expression that he has on his face. I like the hair. Like this is kind of like a classic Kraven look too. This is not like a modern Kraven. This is definitely like a Kraven of the 70s and 80s and even into early 90s a little bit. Just great looking expression. Very, very much full of storytelling elements to it. So that part's really cool. And I want to talk too also, since we have him looking at this head-on angle here, about some of his outfit too. I mean, he's got his lion's head vest on him, which is just like flowing and being pushed back as he's quietly moving across this terrain. Really nice paint, really great sculpting. Again, a little hard to see just because of how he's posed as a statue. But, you can see like the really great detail on the lion right here on both sides of it. Man, it's interesting, because it's like, in order to really get a full picture of this statue, you really do have to manipulate it a lot more, because the pose he's in is just so not conducive to really getting a good angle at all of him. And that really is on purpose, though. I believe that's done with intention. Like, that's meant to be this way, because he's meant to be so stealthy and stalking whatever he's doing. So he should be kind of hidden. It makes sense for him to be hidden. I'll take a look at him from this angle also. And same story here, just like here he is creeping along. And what's cool too is like how he's interacting with this terrain, because he's really in touch with this terrain. And I mean that physically and also in a spiritual sense too. I mean, he feels very connected to it, and you can feel the sense of connection in the design of the piece. So, if we tilt him up a little bit this way, you'll get a better look at all the stuff that's going on in this base. And these bases are always amazing. Diamond always does a great job with these. It's the base that's doing a lot here, because when I say he's in touch with it, like there is this physical tangibleness of like where his feet are, and that's obvious, because you got to be on the ground for the most part. But it's how he's moving with the terrain that tells me a lot here. And when you look at the shape of his body again, and we look at the shape of this bamboo in particular, these are the elements that are kind of grounding him into this piece. So we have these vertical bamboo poles that are kind of matching his body over here, because his body and his back are very much straight up and down. These poles are straight up and down, but we then take a look at this spear. And the spear is the direction of the energy of the piece and the energy of the character, and basically the contrast point in the statue, because here's our point of intersection. This is where things kind of get mired. And it's also the fact that this spear is in between these poles. And that part of the story here is telling us that he's camouflaged. He's part of this terrain. He's part of the environment. And this is how we tangibly interpret this part here. So again, now we're looking at it this way. This is how this knee over here is moving. This is where he's facing. So he's moving through it as these things are coming up. That's the juxtaposition. And this is what I went to art school for, folks, to be able to break down statues of comic book characters. But you know what? It's true, because the folks who made these things also went to art school. They also studied their butts off. And, I feel like it's my duty to explain to folks who might not understand what their intentions were as sculptors and artists to people who are buying these things, so that you can get a deeper appreciation of them. That's really what we're doing here. And, I also want to point out again how we're talking about the environment. Let's take a look at those leopard skin pants here, right? So you might just think, whatever, they're leopard skin. That is sculpted detail, so it's a really nice tactile sensation when you touch that part here. But it also kind of mirrors a little bit of the terrain. It might be a little hard to see, but like if you really get a good look inside there, you'll see there's like all these nooks and crannies, and that's very similar to how the pants are. So that's a very intentional choice by the sculptor to do that. And, as far as the bases go too, this is really cool. It's not one of my favorites necessarily, but it's really nicely done. Like, this would fit in great with Swamp Thing. What I do like about it so much, though, is these bamboo poles here. Like, that adds so much to the story of this piece. Jumping around now, check out that belt, by the way, on Kraven. That's a nice belt, nice pointy, thorny belt with some teeth sticking out of it. Also gotta love these sandals that he's rocking, because, he is stealthy after all. He's not gonna wear boots or anything clanging around. Nothing about Kraven is gonna be not natural, unnatural. It's gonna always be something very natural, rooted in the elements of nature, since that's what he does. He's a hunter. He hunts in nature. So all these elements really come together to tell a complete picture of who Kraven is and put together a very nice story. Likewise, too, just go a little more in the anatomy. He's never missing chest day, that's for sure. Chest or shoulders day. This is like Khan from Wrath of Khan. This is a Kraven who works out and looks good doing it. And, just really great anatomy. He's got enormous biceps, by the way. Like, look at the size of these things. Even his triceps are just enormous. This is like probably one of the most ripped statues we've seen since I feel like I did the Mr. Sinister a few years ago. Because that Mr. Sinister, if you guys don't know, I definitely recommend you look it up. That was like Arnold Schwarzenegger cosplaying as Mr. Sinister. This one is equally enormous and jacked, but it feels like it makes a lot more sense, especially with the physicality of how this piece is. And, you know, I've already talked a lot about that in this video here, but again, just like looking at his motion and how we're doing it, I mean, look at the size of his muscles here. He is a wild beast, and that's kind of an important key to get here. And in fact, if you want to look at, again, how this mane is like fitting into his body and how this mane is interacting with Kraven himself, it is very much a part of him. It's not like a separate piece of fabric, because, you know, you could also argue, really, if you want to get nitpicky, that maybe this vest should actually not be clinging to him as much. But I think that's kind of the point here, is the fact that it is just an extension of who Kraven is. And that summarizes the entire costume, the entire wardrobe of Kraven, and how this piece really comes together. So overall, I mean, I don't really have anything negative to say besides what I said about the eyes. And, you know, the eyes are definitely a weird anomaly here in this piece. Even looking at it right now, it's like, they just don't make sense to me. It's at least a good thing that you really don't see them as nicely, and you really wouldn't see them unless you pose them a certain way, and that's really above your own eye level. So if he's on a shelf somewhere and he's kind of like lower to the ground, it really won't be that big of a deal. So not a deal breaker for me. It's just definitely a weird choice, but overall, this is a really great Kraven statue, and there's not really a ton of Kraven stuff out there. I think there's like an action figure that's come out in the last few years, at least one or two from Marvel Legends. There may have been another Diamond Select piece. There was a Kraven mini-mate from Diamond, but really Kraven stuff is few and far between, and this one is just so strong. I definitely gotta recommend it. You know, if you're trying to fill up your Spider-Man Rogues gallery, then there has to be a place for Kraven. And I've looked at other members of his Rogues gallery before. I've looked at Doc Ock statues. I've looked at Green Goblin not too long ago. I've looked at a lot of different ones, but this Kraven is so good. And what I like about it is how it's also rooted in realism. Because like I said, that Green Goblin, he was flying around on his glider. Doc Ock is always usually on his like tentacle arms or whatever. You know, any goblins always have their gliders now. Think about goblins. So, you know, as far as like the characters go, this one just feels the most interesting to me because of the environment he's in, because of how he's interacting in it. I like also how compact the piece is, because you can see it's not a very large piece. It's a great size though, and then a lot of that is just because it is so compact and all the information is just down in this area. It is such a masterfully crafted piece that I can't recommend it enough. And really, I'm actually shocked I'm talking this much nice stuff about it too, because Kraven's not like one of my favorite guys out there, and I wasn't like, you know, wowee, Kraven, gotta get it. But now that I do have it in my hands, I'm just pretty wowed by it. So highly recommend this one, top to bottom. Like, from every element, other than the eyeballs being a little teeny tiny, every element of like the base, the tactile sensations of it, the storytelling of the piece, it all just comes together and makes this like probably one of my favorites of 2023, to be honest. I mean, if I was going to do a top 10 list, I'm pretty sure at this point Kraven has now cracked that list. So yeah, definitely going to give this a high recommend here. And if you'd like to pick up this Kraven for yourself, I recommend you use my Amazon affiliate links, which you can find in the description for this video below. If you use those links, it helps out this YouTube channel at no extra cost to you, and I'd be forever grateful if you did. So until next time, I'm Matthew. This has been Nerd News Today. This is our look at the Marvel Gallery Kraven PVC diorama statue, and what a great piece it is. But hey, don't take my word for it. Let me know what you think about the statue in the comments below. So until next time, I'm Matthew, Nerd News Today. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.